meal in the winter is pretty much as good as the summer. You came from a pretty difficult background.
Like, I grew up, my father was rarely ever around, and I struggled with that for a long time. Then my mother, she had a drug problem, to certain times in my life. For instance, when I was 5 years old, my mom she was on, crystal meth, and she took me out to the woods, and it was 3 days and 3 nights we were in those woods. And I remember the feeling of the presence of God during those 3 days, because I didn't suffer, I didn't suffer at all. But
tell them how you got water for her. I was a little kid.
yeah. So she was, crying about these coyotes. She said, coyotes are going to get me. Coyotes are going to get me. And I was 5 years old. I didn't know what to do. So she climbs a tree and it falls and she breaks her hip. And then so she's sitting there for 3 days with a broken hip, and I'm just waiting for help. And she's like thirsty, and she's like, Donovan, I need some water. And I remember getting a little soda can, like a pop can, real old one that I had just found in the woods. And I found a puddle, and I got her water from the puddle. Eventually, somebody found us 3 days later, and I went to foster care and whatnot. But I had a really rough upbringing. I had a really rough experience childhood. And I believe, and it was torturous, and I suffered because of it. But I believe that God has put me in this position so I can reach others in kind of the same situations. I want to help people that are addicted to drugs, that are, that don't know who they are, that have issues with their identity and with their father, because that was me, and I'm 23.
What are you seeing when you look at the younger 20-somethings in society?
Well, there's just a lot of what I'm seeing is I'm just seeing people are lost. There's so many things being hit at them at once. They've got the food are being poisoned, the media. I know kids that they can't go time without being quiet because their thoughts, they don't want to hear their own thoughts. Because of the technology, this is what a lot of people in your generation doesn't understand, is that when these kids are growing up with laptops in their, they're coming out of the womb with electronics attached to them. So because of that, they're going through the earth and they never have a silent moment. They're always listening to something with an AirPod. They're always talking to somebody on the phone. They never have a moment of silence by themselves, and they're going crazy,
This is medicine for you out here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, the biggest medicine is my connection to God. When you have a connection to Christ and you forgive and you have that peace, there's nothing like it. To be a son of God on this earth, it's an amazing experience.
So you forgave your parents?
Yeah, I did. It was the hardest thing I ever did. But I forgave. I went to them in person. It's important when you forgive your parents to go to them in person. And I didn't forgive them for what they did. I forgave them for me resenting them because they couldn't help themselves. I shouldn't have resented them because it wasn't my place. I'm not God. It wasn't my place to judge them, And the moment I realized this is when I had become my father. I was on drugs, running around. I was almost having a child out of wedlock. And that's when I realized I had become my father. I couldn't hate him anymore because I was him.
When was that? How many years ago?
About 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when that happened, it changed my life. I went to my father. God told me that I needed to go and forgive my parents. So I went and I forgave my parents. And as soon as I did that, as soon as I forgive my mother and father, that weight that I'd been carrying all my life, that burden, that anxiety, depression, all those confusions, it all was gone in an instant. And I just, ever since, it's been 3.5 years, I've never felt fear, anxiety, depression. It's not in me anymore. God took that spirit away, So it's a spiritual battle.
There just aren't many heroes in society for young people, right? Who do you look up to?
Jesus.
Okay, that's your hero.
Definitely. I couldn't look up to a man. I don't think anybody should. I think the biggest thing is that there's no guidance, there's no direction, there's no community. 100 years ago, people lived in communities.